What's the saddest meal you've ever eaten? I was 11 when my dad stopped setting a place for my mom at dinner. Not because they were divorced, not because they were fighting, because nobody knew where she was. Mom had left for work on a rainy Tuesday morning and never came home. One minute she was texting me reminders about my math test. The next she was just gone. At first everyone treated it like a misunderstanding. Maybe her phone died. Maybe her car broke down. Maybe she'd show up any minute with some crazy story. But by day 3, there were police officers sitting in our living room. By day 7, reporters were calling. By day 14, people stopped saying, "She'll be home soon." They started saying, "We're praying for your family." And somehow that felt worse. For a while neighbors brought food. Lasagnas, casseroles, cookie trays. Our refrigerator had never been fuller. But every meal felt wrong because Mom wasn't there making fun of Dad for overcooking everything. Then the food deliveries stopped. The phone stopped ringing as much. Life started moving on for everyone except us. Dad barely slept. Most nights I'd hear him walking around the house at 2 in the morning, checking locks, checking windows, as if Mom might suddenly appear outside. One Friday night about 2 months after she disappeared, I came downstairs hungry. Dad was sitting at the kitchen table surrounded by papers from detectives. He looked exhausted. There wasn't much food left. Just a can of tomato soup and half a sleeve of crackers. I asked if he wanted some. He stared at the papers for a second before nodding. Sure. So I made dinner, if you could even call it that. 1 pot of soup, a handful of crackers, 2 bowls. That was it. I carried his bowl over and sat across from him. Neither of us spoke. The clock ticked. The soup steamed. Dad just stared at the empty chair beside him. Mom's chair, the one nobody had touched in weeks. I took a spoonful. It tasted mostly like salt. Dad never touched his. Finally, he said, "Your mom hated tomato soup." I looked up. He gave this tiny laugh. Remember? She said it tasted like somebody blended ketchup and disappointment. For the first time in months, I smiled, because that sounded exactly like her. Dad smiled too. Then his eyes filled with tears. And mine did too. We sat there laughing and crying at the same time over the world's saddest bowl of soup. Then Dad reached into his pocket. "I found something today." He pulled out a folded receipt. At first, I didn't understand why it mattered. Then I saw the date. The day Mom disappeared. On the back, in her handwriting, was a note. Just 3 words. "Love you both." Dad had found it stuffed inside her car's center console when detectives returned the vehicle. Neither of us said anything. We just stared at those words. Because it was the first thing we'd seen written by her in months. Dad finally unfolded the receipt completely. And another line was written underneath. A grocery list she'd started before work. Milk, bread, my favorite cereal. Nothing important. Nothing dramatic. Just proof that when she left that morning, she fully expected to come home. That hit harder than anything. The soup got cold. Neither of us finished eating. Years later, they found out what happened to Mom. A drunk driver had forced her car off a remote mountain road. The vehicle wasn't discovered until nearly 4 years later. At least we finally got answers. But even now, whenever I see tomato soup, I think about that night. 2 bowls, 1 empty chair, and a grocery list from someone who thought she'd be home for dinner.